Hi, and welcome to today's webinar, 5 Secrets to Recruiting International Students. I want to thank everyone who has joined us today, who's on the line. And really, the idea behind this webinar is that, we know that each year hundreds of colleges and universities compete to really win the attention of international students and recruit them to come to their campus. And these students really play an integral role in improving a school's academic profile. And for reasons that we're going to review in today's webinar, engaging these students is often a complicated process that looks materially different than the recruiting practices currently used with domestic students. This session today will identify some of the more notable international recruiting challenges and then highlight some new ways to overcome those challenges. So our program is going to consist of 2 parts. The first part, we're going to give you a quick view of the international enrollment trends. We are then going to take a look at 5 challenges that international recruiters face, as well as solutions to tackle those unique challenges. And then the second, and actually we're also going to weave in some real-life practical examples of our client schools that are using innovative strategies to meet those unique needs of international students. And then in the second part, we're going to talk through a case study that's going to be presented by my co-presenter today. And you'll learn how UC Riverside is augmenting their traditional recruiting methods by using new online ways, and they're really driving some material results for that organization. Today's presenters, I'm Erin Warren, and I'm Chief Marketing Officer of College Week Live. I'm responsible for all of the marketing that comes out of the College Week Live organization. That includes direct-to-consumer, direct-to-student initiatives, our outreach to high school counselors, as well as the B2B marketing that we do to colleges and universities. I was formerly with Sallie Mae and with UPromise, so have been in the education space for a while. I am joined today by Elizabeth Lopez. She's the International Admissions Counselor at UC Riverside. She's been there for 4 years and specializes in international recruitment and admission, and conducts recruitment and evaluations on students from India, Korea, China, Taiwan, and Canada. And so with that, let's dig in. So first I want to start by recognizing that schools are looking internationally more and more to meet recruiting goals. And one thing, if you look at the data from IIE, the 2013 Open Doors report, you'll see that there's tremendous growth in this space on the phone. But when you look at new international student enrollment in the United States, you'll see not just a 10% increase from 2012 to 2013 versus the previous year, but you'll see a dramatic 25% increase over the past 5 years. And then the second piece is you look at overall international student enrollment within the United States, you'll see a 7% increase year over year, and then a 22% over the past 5 years. So clearly this is an influx of new students and growth of prospective targets for U.S. institutions that is so large, it's too large to ignore. But international recruiting is much more complicated, as many of you know, and I think that's probably why you chose to join us for today's webinar. There are significant challenges. So first of all, let's just quick review of them. It's a much lengthier process than that of the domestic admissions process, and it's a longer process, but it's also a process that is not necessarily ingrained within it's not the standard path within these other countries. So it's not like in the United States where I'm a junior in high school and I'm following a well-worn path to college within the United States. The second piece, it contains many more players. So we know that this is a more complicated landscape where you have independent agents and consulting firms often playing that intermediary role between your institution and the students that you're looking to recruit. Next one, it's far more fragmented. So where you may have some folks within your own institution that are focusing on recruiting, you have another group of folks in your institution that are focused on international student services. And then it has a lot of additional steps and considerations that are not associated with the domestic admissions process. So navigating visas, TOEFL language tests or other types of language tests, cultural transitions, and often you need far more brand awareness to drive and attract the right types of international students. And then there's language and cultural barriers, pretty obvious there, but it really does dramatically complicate the landscape when you're trying to recruit students who share very different cultural and languages than the U.S. institution. And these challenges are often experienced with domestic recruiting, but they really are magnified for international institutions. So as we start to look at the admissions challenges, reach. So you have limited time and resources to travel physically to these high schools and to visit students at physical fairs worldwide. Database and network reach limitations are often a problem. And then privacy rules governing international outreach, marketing rules can often inhibit or complicate this process. The second piece is that there are absolute challenges in increasing the engagement before, during, and after live student and agent visits. So even when you are able to travel, trying to continue to maintain a relationship with that prospective student is more complicated than it is within the United States, where there's more well-worn paths of communication. And often you are also then competing with rival schools for the best students. So there are international students that have decided that they're going to come to the United States to go to college. They know that they're on this trajectory, but you're often competing for the best students. And what we've seen on some research that we've done with Noah Levitz is that the average international student applies to fewer schools than their domestic counterparts. And so even just trying to get that application is somewhat more challenging from this pool of students. Next piece is really ensuring that international students are properly prepared for study abroad. So they may aspire to study abroad, but do they really understand and are they well equipped to handle not just the paperwork and visas, but also those cultural transitions that are so important to ensuring success of international students on your campus. The next piece is really delivering the right message to the right prospective students and their parents. So we know that international parents are an integral part of the application process for international students. Still citing that same research that we did with Noah Levitz last year, we saw that over 50% of international students cited their parents as key influencers on which institution to attend. I don't think that's necessarily shocking data, but what I think is interesting is that those having to communicate with international parents maybe adds more complexity to the process, where very often you may have to communicate in language to really reach that parent. And then the next piece is really around reaching an international audience that relies on new channels and methods of communication versus traditional channels. So what we know is that international students are far less likely to come visit your campus. So the challenge to you back as admissions enrollment marketers is what are the new channels that you're going to leverage to be able to fill in for that gap where international students are not able to come to your campus. So with that, let's dig into the challenge. The first challenge we're going to take a look at is increasing international reach. And what we know is that admissions offices have limited time and resources, making it virtually impossible to meet every prospective international student. And it can often be difficult to build relationships with parents and counselors who influence students' college choice from afar. And then universities don't always have compelling ways of connecting with students beyond inviting them to campus. So as you think about, how do we overcome that barrier of reach? How do we reach prospective students so that you can help them meet and understand and consider your institution? And one thing I think is this idea of preconceived brand bias, which is an important concept, especially on the international side, where this research that's cited on this slide was from our Noah Levitt's research that we did last year on international trends. And what we saw was that overwhelmingly international students have an idea in their mind of a particular institution that they want to attend. So 64% of international students reported that their interest in studying abroad stems from a preference in a particular university. So for those of you on the line who maybe have a brand that's not particularly well known, this is a particularly daunting statistic as you look at trying to grab your share of the international enrollment pie. And it's interesting because this data, as you actually look at regional trends within this, you'll see that it's a little bit different regionally when we broke this out. So folks who, the number 2 reason by region is that for South American students, they were more likely to say that they were interested in studying abroad because they had attended an international high school. And students in Africa were more likely to say that there was no opportunity in their country. So just wanted to cite that before I moved forward. So as we think about what might be some practical strategies that you could use to increase international reach, let's say you're not one of those brands that's at the top of U.S. News Report that gets the attention of the international student community. So I'm going to walk through a couple of examples that we have here in College Week Live, and maybe those will spur some ideas of how you might attack it locally at your university. So one solution is that international students, the good news here is that they rely heavily on technology, and they value live chats and video webcasts more than contact by phone and text messaging. So I think the opportunity here is to think about how might you use low-cost, scalable technology to expand your reach to international students. And the other piece that I want to cite here is that in our research that we did with Noah Levitt's, conversations with current students, admissions counselors, and international student services professionals are extremely influential in helping students think through their application and ultimate enrollment decisions. So as you think about expanding reach, I think you might think about how do you leverage that technology as well as key players within your admissions and enrollment marketing departments to really strengthen your brand within the mind of prospective students. So let's walk through a couple of examples here on this slide. You'll see the first one is a way that at College Week Live we do to build and promote a one-stop information and enrollment site for international prospects. So what it does is it gives an opportunity for you to showcase your brand, pull forward video assets, allow students to chat live and ask you questions. So that's kind of one opportunity. The second one is really around live engagement with staff and students. So how might you use other key stakeholders and partner that with low-cost technology to help build your brand and keep students keep your institution top of mind within prospective students. And then the third piece is how might you think about partnering with organizations that have key content to help boost your brand. So for example, you might think about how do you partner with TOEFL or with IELTS as an example, something that we do here at College Week Live to help provide content that helps prospective international students make smart decisions as they're considering their enrollment options. The second challenge is really around finding the right international students. So it's not just about finding as many applicants as possible, but how do you sift through that and find the right students. And getting to know prospective international students isn't particularly easy. International students do, though, rely on online channels because in-person visits are not feasible. And what we also know is that nearly half of half of international students are not likely to visit your campus. So thinking about ways, one of the things that we often hear is students who show up on my campus are most likely to attend. Yes, absolutely, that makes sense in a domestic environment. But the question is, how does that change when it's an international environment? And you're talking about an international student where they're not likely to come to visit your campus. So the challenge back to enrollment marketers are, how do I help international students get a sense of what my campus is like, and how do I let them show me through activity in an online way that they're interested? Additionally, the international recruiting process is far more fragmented, with multiple parties handling various stages of recruitment. And having so many parties being involved makes it difficult for universities to really know who the best students are to focus their recruitment efforts on. And I think the solution here, as we think through it, is to say, how can you develop thematic-based programming that helps you pull forward the right types of students? And I've pulled on this slide a couple of examples to just talk through. For example, we do this a couple of different ways at College Week Live, and hopefully it might give you an example of how you might rethink your own marketing strategies that are appropriate for your institution. But the first one is, we do programming based on region, understanding that the needs are very different by region. So one way we get at finding the right students is by regional segmentation, and I think that's an opportunity as a marketer that I would think about how you use segmentation and how you develop specific programs that are aimed to the unique needs but on a regional basis. And the second example here that I'll give is we do an event, we've done it for the past 2 years with Big Ten institutions, and the idea is, are there maybe consortium partnerships that might make sense as you try and find the right student? So think about how you might go to market to use technology in a way that shows your institution or highlights your institution within a context of like-minded institutions. The next slide I want to talk through is a case study example with Centennial College, and it's what I think is very interesting about this particular case study is Centennial does some interesting things. Their challenges, they are a 2-year institution in Canada. Their challenge is around increasing enrollment, maintaining international diversity, and improving yield. And the way they attack it in a way that I think is really innovative is by using video presentations during live events to extend their reach. And the way that they do it that I think is unique is they use international students to connect with student ambassadors from their home country. So let's play this out as an example. Say you have enrollment recruiters that are down in Brazil, for example, and they're going to a series of high schools. The opportunity here is to say, hey, can I maintain that relationship after that recruiter leaves? How can I maintain that relationship with those prospective students that I visited, and connect them with like-minded students, with students on my campus, to show that there's a place for that international student on campus, to show that there are students who look a lot like me on your campus, and kind of ease that transition process. So here's an example. Once they may meet prospective students overseas, they invite them to reconnect through online events, whether that's a Study in Canada Day or a live chat session with current students. And these sessions really give the prospective students an opportunity to connect with student ambassadors from their home country. And many students attend 4 or 5 online events throughout the enrollment process, so it's a steady communication cadence. And these ongoing communications really help Centennial meet their enrollment goals from recruitment throughout enrollment, and helps them stretch that contact with that prospective student throughout the process. So the next slide is really around improving international student yield. And to me, this is one where I think that there's a huge opportunity for thinking about technology. But let's first start by talking through the challenges. The first one is that international students, even while the number is really growing in an absolute value way for international students coming to the United States to study, many of these students are being courted by multiple institutions. And I think there's a real opportunity for schools who demonstrate that they best understand the needs of their admitted students and their families to achieve higher yield rates. And the yield process doesn't necessarily end or begin, I would argue, actually, when the student is admitted. I think there's opportunity to think about the yield process from the first time you touch that student all the way through when they arrive at your campus for the first time. So I would challenge folks on this call on this session to think about how you might rethink yield as being a much longer process. And our data suggests that that's an important strategy and an expectation that international students have, where 72% of international students said it was important for them to have conversations with universities at all stages within the enrollment funnel. And again, I'm citing that research that we did last year with Noah Levitz. It's available on collegeweeklive.com for those of you who want to dig in and see more of that data. So really, the decision-making process is longer and more complicated for these students, and they have these additional concerns. And I think the opportunity is to think about how might you have online accepted student events where you really provide more deeper information in a scalable way for your prospective students. The opportunity here is that you could do an accepted student online event where you have video-based presentations or text-based presentations, whatever makes sense, around student and campus life, housing and student services, financial aid, visa process, cultural preparation, and the screenshot that we have here on this slide is actually an example of Notre Dame's online yield event. I think you could think about how to do this for international students broadly, having online accepted student events. But I also think there's an opportunity to think about this in a micro-targeted way, where you may have students who look very different. So you may have students coming from Africa that are much more concerned about visa issues, and you may have students from Asia that have more concerns about campus safety. So think about how you might tailor this online experience, and I think the technology allows you to do it in that way, where it is efficient and scalable, and really provide targeted content back to your prospective international students in a way that ultimately pays yield dividends. So let's dig in a little bit more. I want to dig into this example of the Notre Dame example. So here's a great example at a school who I think does this well, and it's a selective school. But their vision is to develop a high-achieving global student body, and to do that, they're pursuing more personalized, multi-year recruiting efforts that involve live chat sessions, video presentations, and online events. These online events really give admissions a way to have meaningful conversations throughout the the enrollment process, and meaningful conversations with not just students but with parents as well. Again, we know that they're critical to helping the student ultimately make the best enrollment decision possible. The university also hosts invitation-only events for admitted students with upcoming events where they often have sessions that are led by current students and often in their native language. So again, this idea of helping students really feel like there's a place for them on campus by having admitted students speak in language from campus. Or not, but I mean, it gives you the opportunity to really address the needs of prospective students and parents, and leverage folks on campus, a wider array of folks on campus, to help international students be more successful when they ultimately come to campus. And really, we've seen this. The Notre Dame has seen some great improvements around yield rate, diversity, and 89% of admitted students participated in online recruiting activities, which to me as a marketer says, hey, you know what, students are finding this type of interaction to be helpful, and are willing to engage with technology and frankly my institution in this way. The next one is, I think, one that it is something that's going to appeal to everyone on the call. It's really around boosting international recruiting efficiency. And at the end of the day, there's really no way, even if you're in the best funded at the best funded university for travel dollars, there's really no way that you're going to reach all of the right students in person. And at the end, and so there's on one side, you're not going to be able to reach all those students. You're not going to have infinite resources for travel. And then on the other side of this equation is the fact that only 45% of international students have the ability to visit campuses in person before they choose which school to attend. So when you add those up, you really see that there's a lot of pressure within this process, making it difficult for even the most aggressive international recruiting office to actually have in-person meetings with their prospective students, to be everywhere that they want to be. And so the opportunity here is to think about how might you engage your admissions office to use technology as a way that drives scale and efficiency. And I think there's three kind of broad ways that we have outlined on this slide, but I would encourage you to think about it in a way that's relevant for your particular institution. So what are the opportunities for you to engage broadly with a prospective student, or with a wide range of students? So what's a way that you can use technology to expand reach? We do it with College Week Live in broad international affairs, but there's probably other opportunities to think about that. Second one is engaging one-on-one. So how might you also efficiently engage with students through one-on-one chat and really respond to their particular concerns? And then how do you make sure that you're doing that throughout the whole process and deep into the yield process, where you're really responding to those final objections that a prospective student and family may have as they're making their final enrollment decisions. In this case, we're going to talk through Syracuse University example, and how they augment some of their traditional recruiting. So the first piece is, their challenge is around expanding recruiting reach for the international students. There's shifting demographics within the New York and New England, and Syracuse University is looking to recruit students in specific regions around the world in response. They augmented their traditional recruiting methods by engaging students through live chats and online events. This enabled the university to expand reach, attract high-caliber students, and improve yield. In a single year, the university met 4,800 new prospective students from around the world, and students who participated in these online chats had a 22% higher acceptance rate and a 30% higher yield rate when compared with other recruiting methods. So I think in this example, the opportunity is around how might you use these new methods to expand into new markets where where you may not have the resources to just necessarily travel. Next slide is really important on the international side. We know that the challenge here is low retention rates among international students, and what we found from in NAFSA's International Student Retention Report that outside the classroom, students struggle with their language skills as well as their limited knowledge of the American culture. And the solution here is really to recognize that while the international admissions process is a longer process, I think there's some work, and it's very focused on getting the student to apply and then ultimately deposit and attend your institution. I think you can also start to think about, how do I better prepare students so that I am more likely to retain that student after they have come to campus. And I think one of the ways to do that is to think about, how do you help your prospective students and admitted students understand and be better prepared when they get to your campus. And I think some ways that you might think about doing that is to build content presentations that might help deliver information to students that better helps them understand what to expect when they get on campus. So whether that's engaging with current international students and faculty prior to getting there, and there's different ways that you could do that, whether that's through chat presentations or video-based presentations, or videos that you may already have about international students. Whether that's programming on navigating the process and the culture. So for example, we do a lot of work with Education USA. They often present in our events, and the whole idea behind having them present is better equipping prospective students so that when they get to the United States, they feel armed to be successful with the information that they need. And I would also think about, how do you leverage the support of your international services team, not only once they get to campus, but actually back it up and think about how to use them throughout your recruiting process to make sure that you're really helping your students understand what that campus is going to be like, and do it in a way that's culturally relevant to that type of student. So some other research that we had done around the specific issues that were different for students of different regions, we found that Canadian students who come to school in the United States were more likely to be homesick, but students from China were frankly more concerned about campus safety. So the challenge back to enrollment marketers is, how do you build programs, information programs, that address the unique needs of prospective targeted student bases in a way that makes them feel really good about the decision to ultimately attend your institution. And I think there's real opportunity in using technology to really build that bridge. So now let's talk about the case study here is really around the University of San Diego and how they prepare international students for the transition. Here's a good example where they leverage online techniques to build personal relationships with prospective students who are academically prepared. And the university hosts weekly chat sessions that connect prospective international students with current students, admissions counselors, and the ministry director, who answer specific questions and share their personal perspectives on what makes the University of San Diego special. And it's been remarkably successful, where they have been able to attract 3 times more students to online events versus campus events, which I think makes sense given the complexity of actually attending online events for students, for campus events for students who might be located outside of your region or indeed country. And they also saw improved yield. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth Lopez to walk through the case study for University of California at Riverside.
Thank you. So good afternoon. Again, my name is Elizabeth Lopez. I'm an international admissions counselor for the University of California, Riverside. Today I'm going to be sharing some of the tools of how we segment our audience and communicate with students through a virtual platform and how that has boosted our international admissions here at UC Riverside. So through use of a virtual platform, we've been given the opportunity to communicate with students in a setting that's more accessible as well as comfortable for them. It's given us the ability to reach new unreachable audiences with little investment. We have encountered some challenges. Funding is limited within our own environment. So we're kind of restricted as to where we're allowed to visit and not. Through the use of a virtual platform allows us to connect with students before we decide whether or not we're going to invest that money to visit that territory at some time in the recruitment process in the future. In regards to non-resident initiatives, we do compete with our other UC counterparts. So again, through the virtual platform, it allows us to connect with students, engage their interests prior to deciding whether we're going to put the funds to make the visits to those areas. Faculty engagement is another very difficult area to gain support in. Often faculty are not interested in making that connection with the student. However, once an application is submitted, faculty are more than likely to want to make some type of effort to speak with that student. And through the virtual platform, it's as easy as being able to connect through their offices. So they really don't have to go anywhere. They're able to just make that connection, whether it's chat, Skype, email, etc. Here I want to share our segmentation strategy. Based on the stage of the pool that the student's at, the message can be tweaked to appropriately fit that audience. Also, depending on the stage and the process that the student is, we may refer them to a specific website, whether it be residency for an out-of-state student, it could be the college or major website if it's a domestic student, rankings website, etc. Here I want to talk about the multi-channel communication stream. Again, I do want to remind everyone that it's important not to forego other forms of communication in favor of just virtual or electronic communication methods, because those are also still important. Through the use of email, direct mail, websites, and especially social media, through blogs and social networks, we've been a big outlet in how UCR promotes ourselves. We're able to promote our campus tours, our events. It gives us a direct one-on-one approach to students to be able to connect with their admissions counselors. We also have our Highlander Day, which is a big yield event that takes place every April, and through that we've gotten an online component. So students who aren't able to physically come visit our campus are still able to participate through presentations and online chats that take place on that same day. We also have another great example is just recently we hired a student intern. She's actually an international student intern, and she's been able to connect with students in China through Renren, which is equivalent to Facebook. We have Weibo, which is equivalent to Twitter, and then she's created a UCR blog where she's able to connect with students and kind of gauge that interest as well. As far as our admit, applicant, and surge students, we just recently created 2 10-minute videos, one of which is assisting students on how to properly fill out the application, because we do find that international students often have difficulties in filling out the application. So we went and we posted that online, easily accessible to those students. We also just created a 10-minute I-20 instructional video for those students coming on an F1 visa. We did encounter that many I-20 students were coming in having difficulties submitting their documents and properly filling them out. So what we did is we created this video. It's a whole how-to video with a PowerPoint and a Q&A at the end, and we uploaded it to our webcast environment for those students to have available to them. Okay, here you'll see just an example of one of the many many places we participate in. This is International Day. We do it every year. It's through College Week Live. We seem to have quite a bit of success through this venue. Here's another example of some of our students. These are actually UC Riverside students, and what they are is they're interacting with students all across the world, giving that one-on-one student connection. And then here, really quick, you will also see just an example of a typical chat between an admissions counselor or a UCR rep and a student. So questions often gauge from just typical admissions questions, and they may get more specific, again, depending on the stage where the student is in and their admissions process. Okay. So I actually have some statistics I do want to share, and I'm pretty sure this PowerPoint will be available to you later. So let me just dive into detail about an example of application and admits and the progress over time. This growth is mainly due to the interaction we've had through the virtual platform. We have, however, increased travel in the past year, but a lot of what you see here is due to our virtual outreach efforts. 2014 is not included, but you will see that we did have a 21% increase in our international students. We had a little over an 18% increase for our out-of-state students. And then if you're interested in comparing that, we've had a 1.6 increase in our California residents. Okay. So for our next slide here, you'll see our SIR, which is our Statement of Intent to Register. That's the student committing to our campus, and our enrollment for previous years. You'll notice that the SIR enrollments for 2013 are not pictured here, but they are roughly the same as 2012's numbers. And you may question, like, why is there not much of a difference there? We have had to make some adjustments in how we enroll our students, so the number doesn't surprise us. Okay. So then I also just wanted to share with you, in 2009, we took a really big risk by eliminating one of our in-person fall events. It's a fall open house. We had it every year. So the numbers weren't doing as great as we had hoped for. So we eliminated that, and in place of it, we brought out a virtual open house for our students. Since then, we haven't gone back to any more of those fall open houses. The results from our 2009 virtual event that we had, we actually saw an 87% increase in cost savings for our office, and we saw twice the number of students in the online environment versus the physical in-person environment. The students in the online environment yielded at a 10% higher rate versus those who were not able to come to that type of forum. And then I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Erin.
So a couple of questions. We're actually going to take questions now, but a couple things. I see a few folks have asked us if they're going to get the slides, and yes, we will send out slides for folks who have attended today's session, so you will be getting those. So we will send them out quickly, as soon as we can in the near term. We've got some great questions coming in, so if you want to continue to send questions my way, we'll get through as many as we can. First question is, what's the best practice for the one-to-one live chats? Is there a program that works best for the majority of students, Skype or a live chat program? And how I would answer this question is, it really depends on what you want to get out of the chat. So I think there's benefits to a Skype kind of one-to-one chat session, but what I would say is there's a lot of inherent pressure in a Skype conversation, right? So think about it from the student's perspective. If I'm a student, an international student, and we're going to have a Skype chat, a Skype session, there's a lot of pressure on me as a prospective student speaking directly with either an admissions counselor or an admitted student. And so I might think about the context and the timing of that chat, and there's certainly a time and place for it. But certainly, I would say when students are earlier in the process and you really want to think about how to, you want a student to ask questions that they're comfortable asking without the pressure of being concerned about their language skills, or the question of, or the pressure of, am I asking a dumb question or a personal question. You may find that Skype is a little too intense for that type of conversation. So I would say consider the context, but there's a time and place for, I would say, kind of a one-to-many chat application versus a more Skype-based conversation. Elizabeth, I don't know if you would answer that differently or expand on it based on your experience.
I pretty much agree with you on that one.
Okay. So let's see. We've got some more questions here. Question here around how does someone respond to misperceptions about campus safety with one random incident defining an institution for other internationals in a given country. And I think this is where having frequent conversations with your prospective students could really pay off. So where you have maybe an issue of campus safety, I would encourage you to make sure that you weave that through all of your communication touch points with students who from a region where you think that there may be that misconception. And then I would think about how do you communicate against that, or how do you make that prospective student feel good about feel less secure on your campus. Ways that you might do that is maybe you have current students who are from their region talk about how they feel safe on campus. That might be one way. And I would think about how you do it in a multi-channel approach where you think it is a real concern. I think you have to deal with it head on, and I think the best way to do it is to weave it into your communication timeline, into your communication plan, and make sure you're hitting it frequently throughout the full communication cycle. Let's see. So a question, I'm recruiting fee-paying visiting students for a year or semester. Do you have any additional advice for those of us who might be looking for the short-term international student? I personally don't. Elizabeth, I'm not sure if you would have any advice for that.
In regards to the short term, we don't really necessarily, we do get short term students who come through here, but it's not quite through undergraduate admissions. We work more with long term students. So I wouldn't have very helpful information to assist you with that. We're looking for degree seeking students. That's more of the area and support that we offer too.
Okay, great. Why don't you keep the video, because I've got another question for you. There's a question around what virtual platform does UC Riverside use?
So we use a multitude of virtual platforms, whether it be College Week Live, of course, is a big one that we do utilize. We do videos on the student's account, so once a student has applied, they create what's known as a MyUCR account, and through there we do upload any type of video we feel necessary or communication, etc. We highly use social media websites, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, like I mentioned earlier, Weibo, Renren. Those are really big platforms in the in Asia, so that's a very popular one. Those are the ones I can think of at the top of my list, but we use all sorts of media outlets, and that's what I'm referring to when I say virtual platform.
Another question for you, Elizabeth, is there's a question around, could you talk more about your use of social media, and maybe a good way to kind of frame that is, how does social media and what role does social media play within the marketing strategy for UC Riverside?
So I hate to keep going back to China and using China as a reference, but it really is one of our bigger areas that we recruit with. And just in general, social media is very popular, especially among young teenagers, which are college age students. So we really utilize Facebook because Facebook worldwide is very popular. We often post different events that are going on campus, different happenings that are going on campus. Our Chinese version of Weibo and Renren, same thing. We post all kinds of events, current, anything a student may need to know if they're applying. We also linked a blog to those websites, where, as I mentioned earlier, I hired an international student to assist with that, where she's able to connect with them student to student and answer any questions they may have, from being a prospective student up until the point that they are an admitted student.
Another question is around how do you find international prospective students to then engage them in the virtual chats? How's the initial contact made? And maybe you want to take that one first, and then maybe I can answer how I see other clients doing that.
Sure, no problem. So as far as how the initial contact's made, we've been fortunate enough where we've been able to get out in the past year or so, where we've made more visits to out of the country. I think that's kind of put UC Riverside on students' radar. Also, we have our website, and I do find that students do frequently visit the website. We have our own international admissions page where students are able to go to. On there, all of our pictures, our contact information. We have an international info email that we utilize. Lots of students make that first contact through there. Going back to our international admissions webpage, we do have a link where students could click on to set up an appointment with a counselor. Again, whether it be Skype, whatever fits their needs, we're able to accommodate it. We work on those students' hours. We get that in China. The time zone's a bit different. If we have to stay up later or wake up very early in the morning to communicate with the student, we will do so. Add on to that one, Erin?
Yeah, I was going to say, one thing that that we see here, and I think some of the enrollment marketing that's most interesting to me is where you see where campuses are weaving together to source students across all channels and then communicating with them through virtual. So what might that mean? That might mean that they might make they may originally get the lead from buying a lead. They may get the lead from a physical college fair. They may get the lead from a feeder high school in another country. They may get the lead from an inquiry, but the idea is all of those sources can ultimately feed your virtual chat. So all of those folks, then all of those leads, prospective students, then ultimately become great candidates for ongoing virtual chats. So if you think about all of your various acquisition channels coming in and different ways of that you're currently getting international students, you can think about using chat to engage those students once you've got them into your inquiry pool. Let's see. We had a question around more on graduate student recruiting, and this is an interesting one that we're just starting to get into the graduate space here at College Week Live, and when I say we're just starting to get into the graduate space, in particular on the international side, we have tons of graduate students who log into our platform looking to learn about particular universities and the programs of study. So this is a real growth opportunity for us, and one that I think is interesting. I think the same rules apply around graduate students and communicating with them throughout the funnel. I think it's a little bit more challenging on the graduate side, where very often you have the role of the department and the faculty advisor that becomes really critical to engaging with the graduate student. But I think the same principles apply for using chat to engage with with graduate students, and we do have on the private side some clients that are using College Week Live to engage with graduate students. But I think it's a real growth area moving forward. I think again the same principles would apply with the graduate student and how you think about engaging them throughout the process. So another question is around, my institution is considerably smaller than many, 1,800 full-time students. Many of our U.S. students link the small size with personal connections, community exclusivity, individualized support, etc. When I go abroad, the small size sometimes just seems to make us seem more unknown. Is there any advice that you have that could be unique to small colleges? And my advice here is that, I'm going to give you advice as a marketing strategist. So, my thought is go with your strength. So if your strength is about community and individualized support, I would really parlay that into building your brand internationally around that strength, and think about where maybe you have some international students already on your campus that might be able to help students that are from that region really connect with that value proposition. Because I think going back to the case study around retention and how do you set students up to be successful, it seems like you would have a really strong offer within for international students who really understand that there needs to be support services for them to be ultimately successful. So my advice to you would be to actually play that up and think about how you might leverage that strength by using other folks that are on your campus, maybe your support folks, your international student support, maybe some faculty that are strong in the international side, maybe international students themselves, to really demonstrate that support and help an international student who maybe won't get to your campus before they ultimately decide to go there, help them feel that support that is unique to your campus. Let's see. Elizabeth, good question here for you. A lot of international students are asking for scholarships. Since we're a state institution, we don't have a scholarship for international students. What do other state schools do in this situation?
Good question. That's actually, it's a difficult question to have to answer for international students, because we don't want to be brutal. We don't want to seem like we're not trying to assist the students. I understand that not all students have the funding to attend a four-year university. We don't offer, same like everybody else, we do not offer any type of financial assistance. We do, however, offer merit-based scholarships, and I know many other UCs or big universities do that as well for high-achieving students. We just try to prepare the student early on for the amount that they're going to have to pay. That way there's no surprises down the line when they finally do and they get admitted. There's no shockers like, wow, that's how much I have to pay to attend here. But we just really promote those merit-based scholarships, and then we always encourage the student to try to find funding where they can, whether it be family, friends, etc. But I don't have a right or preferred answer to that question. I do apologize for that, but we're all in that same boat where it is difficult to offer financial assistance to those students.
A couple questions, Elizabeth, for you around who manages the social networking, particularly on Weibo and RenRen. Is that a current student?
We do, yes. That would be my student who I oversee. She actually she posts frequently. So what we do is we want to make sure the communication is the same across the board, whether it's Facebook here in English or it's in Chinese or whatever language it's in. We're making sure the same message is going out. If we have to put it into Chinese characters, she's really good at doing that. She takes care of that for us. But again, the message is the same across the board. Except for the blog, what she does with that, it's more of a personal approach, trying to get that student perspective. So she just talks about her journey as an international student here at UC Riverside and how she's integrated into the campuses and the different resources that we offer, etc.
Okay, one last question, and it's around, do you have any tips for managing staff members who may be given live chat duties? The fear is that these duties can be great distractors, and do you recommend having a person who's specifically devoted to this task? The way I would think about this is think about it similarly to how you would answer the phone or how you might respond to other inquiries into your institution. And I would challenge you to think about because we get this one a lot, and I think it's an interesting point, and I think about it from my own perspective as having a marketing organization and how I have to move coverage to really based on what the trends are saying, right? So what channels are important. I think one of the things that I would think about is can you afford to not respond to live chat? And I would think about it within the context of for students, this is their preferred way of communicating, and so if they're not going to pick up the phone and call you, can you really afford to not respond to them in chat? And so that would be kind of one answer. And then the second answer would be I would think about how you might really refine your chat responses. So I think there's a certain amount of operational efficiency that could be met. Maybe you think about how to have particular answers where you get same questions over and over. That basically cuts down on the amount of thinking, head scratching that a rep needs to do to respond to a chat. Elizabeth, do you have any last thoughts on this one?
Sure. Let me just over here. So I understand chat is not everybody's preferred preference. I understand it could be kind of awkward having that interaction via a screen. However, I have found it is very helpful. The students do enjoy that very personal attention, that one-on-one. Even if they can't be here physically, it's kind of the same effect for students. I do encourage it. In our office, what we do is there's about 5 or 6 of us who work with international students. Some of us, it's more of an area of strength to present virtually or Skype in with a student. We'll take those on, but everybody's pretty much willing. If a student's assigned to us, it's a student that we've worked with, we've evaluated, we answer that student specifically. If it's a prospect student, any one of us is willing to take it, but it's just something you have to get comfortable with because you really do want that student to feel that connection because they do remember that later on, and that plays a big role in whether or not they're going to commit to that campus or not.
Okay, great. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. As I mentioned, we will be sending out the slides after the session, so give us a little time to get that together, but you should be receiving it within a few days. If you have any questions, you can email me directly if you have any follow-up questions or anything about specific data, ewarren@collegeweeklive.com. And if anyone's interested in the research study that we did on international with Noah Levitz, that is available on our website. You would go to collegeweeklive.com, look in the top navigation for 4 colleges, and that research is in there. Or you can email me, and I'm happy to send it to you directly. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks, Elizabeth.